Starting live video, guys.
All right,
Okay,
it's already there.
and
It says live now.
It's already there.
all right, so we are back. It's still June 3rd, but it's week 9 of 12 blended families. This lesson is part of the parenting chapters, third chapter of 3. This is called Teachable Moments versus Discipline and Punishment. So last week we talked about all the blessings of being a parent and a step-parent. This last week we were talking about the dark side and how to deal with exes and kids who don't want to blend as well. And we went through the pyramid and things. This week it's more about the roles and responsibilities of a parent, where we are teaching the kids and disciplining and punishing if necessary. Okay, so I use this little staircase thing, and each step is a more severe form of teaching, right? So the first thing we're supposed to do is teach. You set the boundaries. This is good. This is not. This is okay. This is not. And hopefully these are like 2 and 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, right? Teach them young. Somebody said one time that by the age of 3, a kid knows if you're in charge or he is.
Mm-hmm.
Who's running this joint, right?
Yeah.
And the worst thing that can happen is the inmates are running the asylum. So the first thing you got to do is just set the boundaries, right? And we're supposed to be using the Word of God to set the boundaries, and that's what God does with us. He gives us His Word. Everything inside this box is okay. Anything outside the box is not okay. So stay in the box. Everybody says, "Oh, think outside the box." Well, in the world, that may be okay. But as Christians, we need to make sure we stay inside the boundaries that God set for us, because it's for our good. It's our protection, it's safety, it's safe under His wing, under His guidance, and so forth. And that's the way we're supposed to work with our kids, is to teach them what's right, what's wrong, what's safe, what's not safe. Teach them not to play in the street, not to put your hand on a stove, those kind of things. Now, the next thing is you've set the boundaries, so now you got to turn them loose a little bit and see if they obey, which is what God does with us. He says, okay, here's the boundaries, and then He sees where we go. And we're always like sticking our toe over the line, see if somebody's going to cut it off. But now we have to correct the behavior, right? So we've taught what the boundaries are. We set the boundaries. We've educated our kids on what's right, what's wrong. Now we let them loose a little bit, a short rope, to see if they obey. And if they don't, now we have to correct them, which is not very severe. This is not where you would do wax or anything like that, which, in my house we have the Board of Education. It had holes in it. It had my name on it. Correcting is just reinforcing what you taught. And this is where you use teachable moments. And we just last time we were talking about the difference between experience and wisdom, right? Use someone else's experience as a teachable moment to instill wisdom in your kids, right? So you correct by reinforcing what you taught. This is not any form of punishment, really. it's a warning. Right? This is teaching, this is a warning, okay, red light.
I'd look at it in terms of, and Sarah would be better to explain it, but in forms of a teacher, and you teach them how to do, for instance, math, and then you test them, and then you have to go in and make corrections, and then you go back and reinforce that teaching. This is how you do this and apply this, this skill or this technique.
And in the correction, you want to make sure you explain why.
Right. I was gonna say the first thing when you're teaching the rules is, I know that you guys teach that the parents come together as one unit, one team. Teachers try to get the kids to come up with the rules, like, okay, let's all agree on this together, and we have them sign it.
Right.
Saying you understand, but clear expectations. And then when you're explaining, okay, you broke the rule or whatever, then explaining this is the consequence. So clear expectations again.
Right.
Well, that's what we suggest in blended families too. You and your spouse sit down and write up the rules that are supposed to be in our home and what the consequences are going to be. So if one is home and the kids do something wrong, the other spouse knows what's going to happen, and the kids know too. But to make copies of those rules and make the kids sign them, because the teenagers are gonna pull this, well, I didn't know that was a rule. I don't remember you saying that. Well, yeah, you do, I've got the paper right here. But yeah, they'll play those games.
And there's nothing wrong with getting the kids' input,
Right.
like you do in a classroom like that. It's, the parents should be in agreement on what they expect the kids to do, but I don't see anything wrong with allowing them to add their input. I mean, obviously they're probably gonna rebuke you for being too difficult on them, but, you can't be too easy either, so. It's good to be on the same team, obviously, because a house divided amongst itself cannot stand. And for some reason, the kids seem to think it's their job to divide you, especially in a blended family, right? Not so much in the original family, the intact, traditional first marriage, everybody's biological in the family and everything. There's not so much of the wedge thing, but even then, there's some. So it's back to the pyramid. The marriage you guys have to be the one flesh that God said to be, so that you can do this other stuff. If you guys are on different pages, this goes out the window. Okay, so you teach, you correct, which reinforces what you taught. It gives them a little bit of opportunity to be sort of independent, and that's what you're supposed to be as a parent, to raise independent children. Like we said in the last one, there's this 30-year-old that the court had to evict from his parents' house. Well, they didn't teach him to be independent. He was dependent. And, it's just easier to stay at mom and dad's house than go get a job and do his own thing, right? But the whole point of being a parent is to raise independent children. So they can go out and do their life, find a spouse, and raise more independent children. Right? That's the way God wants it. God is so wise in that. The devil wants to mess it all up, and we get 30-year-olds that are in the basement and don't want to leave. So you correct and give them some more opportunities, but if there's like active rebellion, now you have to go through the discipline phase, which nobody really likes. Parents don't like that. Kids don't like it. It's a lot of work for parents, and Karen.
And rebellion is what's expected.
Yeah,
You understand the correction, but now you're making a choice not to.
exactly. So you've done your job. You've given them opportunities to do the right thing, and they just say no, not going to do it, right? And we see over here, God created us with free will. We can choose to obey or not.
Yeah.
But this is like boot camp to me. This is where, like, if you get in the military, there's rules, and you will obey,
Or get kicked out.
or you get kicked out, right? But the whole point of discipline is to create new behavior, right? You want to eliminate the bad behavior and create new, better behavior, okay? So, and this could take a month, maybe more, but it has to be very consistent, and it's the same thing over and over. You got to be on the same page. The kids will always say, hey mom, can I do this? And they'll say, well, ask your dad. Well, I already did. He said it was okay. Well, they never did, right?
That's all right.
Play the games.
Play the games. So you got to be on the same page. You got to know what the situations are. Okay, if it's this, we do that.
Well, a lot of parents don't like to do the discipline because then it causes more things that they have to do as well. And we like to use, for example, like if the kid is really, you corrected them 3 or 4 times, then okay, now we're going to the discipline. No more TV for a week. Well, then the kids we know will start coming into the room where you are, where you have a TV
Yeah,
and you're
to
watching
visit
it
you.
because they want to watch the TV.
Yeah.
So they'll come in to talk to you so they can see the TV. And they think we're stupid, we don't know what they're doing. But a lot of people don't want to go through that, so they skip from correction right into the bigger punishment or abuse.
Well, yeah.
Because it's work to do the
It's a lot of work,
discipline.
and that's exact. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It takes time, it takes effort, and for like at least a month to create a new habit, right? So a lot of parents just skip this altogether.
Right.
It's too much work,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
Let the
And
teacher
if I
at school
take
do
the,
it.
if I take the car away from them, then I gotta transport them
Yeah,
everywhere.
there you go.
So,
See,
yeah,
it's like punishment for
can be-
you to do the discipline for your kid,
Mhm.
So that's why a lot of people don't even do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so what do? They go right to punishment. They just skip this step,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people don't even do the first 2.
Mhm.
They just go to they don't
They
teach.
go to abuse.
They haven't set any boundaries.
Right.
They just start punishing, right? They start slapping, get the belt out, or whatever, get the switch,
Mhm.
and tell the kid to go get his own switch off the tree.
Or just
Yeah.
I've done
not encourage them, use hateful words, you'll
Yeah,
never
it's-
amount to anything, and
you're such an
really beat 'em
idiot.
down. Yeah.
You're no good. You're not worth anything. You'll never amount to anything. All that kind of stuff. But a lot of times it's physical, right?
Yep.
And what happens is the kid is looking for attention,
Yep.
and if they have to do stuff that's bad to get punished, at least they're getting attention.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people think.
Right.
A lot of
So
kids.
there's a lot of kids out there that think love means it has to hurt,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which, if you teach, that's love.
That's right.
And you correct, that's love. Discipline is love. Punishment can be love, but the way the world works, it's mostly physical abuse, right? But that's the next step. Punishment can easily become abuse. So, like I said, each one of these is a more severe form of teaching. So we want to stay at this end of the staircase as much as possible. And teachable moments, my mom was a teacher. My dad was really good about doing guy stuff, hunting, fishing, all that kind of stuff, doing stuff in the garage. So they were more about the teaching end of things, and they corrected. And like I said, we had the Board of Education up until 14 or 15 years old or something like that, and I was like, no, I'm done with that, right? But so there was a little bit of punishment in there, but when it came to this, they were together. And it was because they cared about me doing right that they did the other stuff.
Well,
wanted
and
me
they
to
were
turn
never
out okay.
angry when
Mhm.
the execution was
Yeah.
done,
Right.
which is a big thing, because most people do punish when they're angry.
Yeah, that's, glad you mentioned that, because punishment is valid, but it can't be done in anger,
Correct.
because then it's more abuse, really.
Yeah.
Punishment can be necessary. I mean, punishment can be anywhere from taking somebody's phone away to being locked up.
Yeah, exactly.
Anywhere in there. I mean, there's a lot of room for punishment, right? Abuse, we should never be there. It's extreme punishment. And it's not just physical. It could be mental, verbal, all kinds of stuff.
Abuse is, like you said, should never go there. It's not of God. That's it, I mean.
No, well, there's no
And-
love in it.
Exactly, and so, that's why it's so important, like, you gave an example of how your parents punished you. If you're not careful and, don't punish in anger, you could easily cross that line into abuse.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that was, looking back on it, at the time, I didn't like it, of course. And I always heard, okay, from my dad, this is gonna hurt me more than it's gonna hurt you. And I knew he was lying. Because it must have really hurt him. But they were, usually they'd be sitting on my bed, they'd both be sitting there. I'd be over my dad's knee, whack. At least 2, maybe 3. But my mom was right there too. So there was no way I was getting out of it. I couldn't play on mom's emotions and, oh, no, please, no. And then she talked my dad out of it. No. It was like, nope, you earned it. We're good here.
But she would reinforce,
But
why.
she was there to hug me, and now the teaching part came after,
Yeah.
right? Now you understand why we had to do this. We really didn't want to do it, but, you were going against our teaching and the way we want things to be around here, so, but they were always together. It was never in anger. More often than not, I'd have to spend an hour or 2 in the bedroom watching out the window, waiting for my dad to come home, because that's the way it was. Wait till your dad gets home, right? And there's a couple of things there. My dad was the executioner. Mom was usually the judge, right? She would be the one that would catch me, right? And then she would let the executioner know what the punishment, if it really was necessary, how bad it should be, and all that. But it was never done in anger. It was more out of disappointment, right? They were disappointed that I didn't do what I should have, that I made a bad choice,
Like, no more rocks in the gas tank, Larry.
Well, I was real little when I did that. We had a gravel driveway, and this is probably a 1930s something vehicle. It was old then, but I was helping out. I was putting my gas in the tank, but it was rocks, really.
The rocks.
And one time I used spray paint and painted license plates and stuff too. So that was one of those days. Okay, so you teach, you correct, you discipline, which is hard work for you and a pain in the butt for the kids. Punishment is often a pain in the butt for the kids, but it's sometimes necessary.
Yeah, you gotta do
Yeah,
that.
okay, so I gotta do the example.
Oh, yes.
Uh,
Now it's his turn to tattle up.
now, we were dating, we're not married yet.
Right.
We went to McDonald's with a little 4-year-old, and all of a sudden she's like screaming, throwing french fries all over the place, and we're like, never done that before, what's up?
She had.
So Carol reaches under the table, pinches her on the leg real hard.
And I had never done that before. I don't know where that came from.
Her eyes got really
Yeah,
big.
it shows you.
But she stopped, right? So sometimes punishment in a situation like where a kid's throwing a tantrum or something, like in a public place, sometimes it's necessary to just give enough pain to stop the behavior.
Yeah.
Get their attention, right? It's very short, but very intense for a very, very short period of time, like, and they wake up.
They snap out of it.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay,
And she never did it again.
no, yeah,
What I learned in Arizona and then in my home state where I came from, Kansas, they allow for what they call corporal punishment.
mm-hmm.
Now, the way the Child Protection Agency defines that is you can spank them on the fatty part of the
Right.
bottom, open hand, and leave no mark.
Wow.
Right,
5 inches.
no
away from-
boards,
Yeah.
Oh my
Or
God.
else it's considered abuse if there's a mark left.
right,
So, you know, even with corporal punishment, there is that certain line you don't cross.
right.
Like you said, not go over into abuse and not
Yeah.
do it in anger.
Well, and the Bible says, you know, spare the rod, spoil the child,
Mhm.
basically,
Yeah.
right? And, I think it's
But
like,
some people take that to the extreme.
well, yeah, they end up over here.
Yeah.
You know, it's not here that where they're at. They're over here, which there's no love here. This is
Right.
usually out of anger.
Yeah.
A lot of times punishment comes out of anger, and that's not good.
Mhm.
It needs to be out of love.
Yeah.
Because that's how God does with us. He chastises those he loves,
Yes.
right? Somewhere in here. And if you're not being chastised, you need to check which family you're in. If you're in God's family, you're going to be chastised. But just to go through this real quick, okay, free will, we can obey or not. Teach your children so they'll be wise. God wants your children to be the wisest, so we can be the salt and the light to everybody else. Proverbs 1-7, the very first part of Proverbs, it's number 7, fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So without that, you really are kind of an idiot, I guess. In the Old Testament, they had 613 laws, and if you broke one, you're a sinner. You know, and it's like in baseball, batting average, you can have 999 hits in a row and then get an out, and now you're not at 1,000 anymore, and you'll never get there. Proverbs 15:5, a fool despises his father's instruction. So, you know, children tend to be foolish anyway, right? And there's a thing in Proverbs that it talks about, you know, spare the rod, spoil the child, and wickedness is bound in the heart of a child, but you could beat it out of them, right? So, I mean, you know, God was, you know, there was a need for that kind of training, if you will. And like Karen was saying, there is a point that it becomes abuse, right? So, God chastises those he loves, Hebrews 12:7. God is merciful, Jeremiah 10:24. Rebellion shows a lack of understanding. And Karen brought that up, you know. Sometimes it's just downright rebellion, right? I don't want to do what you're telling me to do. But that just shows that they don't really get it, right? And children need to learn. Let's learn, not leer. There are consequences to their choices. And we look at Psalm 28:4 there. Now, consequences, I like to break it up into these two words, con and sequences, because typo. Bad. Con is generally something bad. It's a negative. And then sequences are things that are going to happen. So consequences are bad things that are going to happen. Okay? There's a thing in Deuteronomy 21:18-23 where, you know, obviously it's Old Testament, but the parents had to bring their adult son to the town center and basically tell everybody, we've done everything we can, this kid is just not getting it, he's rebelling and misbehaving and causing trouble and everything, and he's like, 18 years old or something, so they bring him into the center of the town so he can be stoned. Discipline was a big deal. I mean, it still is. God will give you enough rope that you can hang yourself. But he's always hanging on to the rope. If you get to that point where you got nowhere else to go, he's there. So, any other comments, questions? I know we're kind of running out of time.
Well, when they, in the old days too, when they killed somebody, they'd strap the body to the person that killed them and
Yeah,
had to carry it around.
Yeah, in the old Roman days, that was, one of the punishments for murder was they would strap the dead body to you. Then you'd have to carry it around till it, basically till you died. Because you'd get all sorts of disease and everything from that thing hanging on you. So, yeah, they came up with all sorts of nasty things.
Well, and in some of the foreign countries too, if you steal, they'll cut a hand off, if you rob or
They'll
whatever.
still do that.
And with their tongues, if you said something to, especially somebody higher up, they'd cut your tongue. I mean, stuff like that has been going on for a long time, but if we don't take the time to do the teaching, and we had been asked many times when we first started this teaching, that works for a young kid, but for a teenager it doesn't work. Well, we know it does work in our own instance. Nobody took the time to teach my 15-year-old son things that a 15-year-old boy should be doing. You took the time and taught him things and let him feel comfortable enough to ask you things and not be yelled at because he asked. So it can be done at any age. If that is applied, those steps, it can work. We know that.
Well, the difference is, are you doing it through love? Or
Right. Yeah.
something else?
Yeah, not just because I'm the new stepdad, you're gonna do it, because I said so. That don't work.
Right.
I
Anybody else?
remember someone
Karen?
saying, I remember being told that discipline without love is like being a tyrant.
Yes, true.
So you
Yeah.
want to put love in there. When the
See-
children know that they are cared for and loved and respected, then it's easy to, discipline no one likes, but it's more easier to accept when they know that that's the premise or the foundation
Yeah.
for which you're.
You care.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the way God does. He chastises us because he loves us, right? And as parents, as fathers and moms and everything, we teach because we love our kids and we want them to do well. If we don't care, we'll just let them do whatever. It's work to teach. You have to go out of your way, you have to take your time, you have to love when they're not lovable, and all that. But
And we've also seen the other way too, Larry, when the parents want to be the friend
Oh.
and not the parent.
yeah,
They don't want to take the time to do the parent. No, I don't want to make Joey mad.
well, they don't do any of this.
Yeah, they don't.
If you're a friend to your kid, you're not doing any of
And the
this.
kid really ends up in trouble later on.
And you're really not doing much of that either.
Right.
So.
Okay, just wrap it.
All right, well, that's it for this week. They're a little shorter because we're doing 2 at once here, but we'll be back and doing week 10 next week. Again, it's blendedfamiliesministry.org
I was just waiting for it to stop.
and christianlivingradio.com, and we're on iHeartRadio.